You know, 1991 was the year when I was born, and in this year, so many interesting events happened. The Soviet Union fell, the Gulf War escalated, and the Yugoslav War started. But around the same time, a new generation of supercars had made their debut, which would dominate the 90s and create a legacy that would last long beyond that. Jaguar XJ220, Bugatti EB110, Ferrari F50, Mercedes CLK GTR, or McLaren F1. And while being not nearly as powerful as any of the aforementioned, there was only one car that would dominate every kid's bedroom wall, and that's the Lamborghini Diablo. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Imperial Diecast. And today we're going to be taking a look at an early 90s Lamborghini Diablo in scale 124 by Maisto. A couple weeks ago I made a review on the Bugatti EB110, and this is the car I was talking about when I said that I bought it along with the Lamborghini Diablo that I was looking for. Since it is such an iconic car of the 1990s, I had to get it. And when I got both cars, I decided to review both of them. Now, the Diablo has had many iterations throughout the 90s. There was the base Diablo, or just Lamborghini Diablo. Then there was the Diablo SE, and then there was the Diablo SV, I think. And then there was the Diablo GT, which had different headlights. And let's not forget the Lamborghini Joda, which was a variant of the Diablo. Lots of different versions, but this really was the car that started all of that. And the Diablo is the successor to the Lamborghini Countach, which dominated the 80s. Although, of course, it was never as fast as the Ferrari F40, it still captured the looks of something out of this world. So the Diablo had quite big shoes to fill. And the question is, was it really a worthy successor to the Countach? Now, Maisto made this version in 3 different colors. The one that you're looking at is red, but apart from that, there's also a black version, which is somewhat rare to find, and a yellow version, which I believe always comes with the spoiler. This version, however, does not. Just like on the Countach, the spoiler was an extra that you could buy when you were buying the real car. On the Countach it cost $5,000. I'm not sure exactly how much it cost on the Diablo. But let's begin the review now by taking a look at the front of the vehicle. So looking at the front of the car, you'll notice that this is a 90s supercar by the fact that it has pop-up headlights. The later Diablo GT replaced these with the headlights from, I believe, a Toyota. I'm not sure. And, of course, the opinion is split as to which variant of the Diablo looks better. Personally, I think that they both have their pros and cons. But I'm definitely a fan of these pop-up headlights because they're basically a dying breed. I mean, they stopped making these in the automotive industry in the late 90s, early 2000s. So it's cool to have a diecast model car that still has these. Although, of course, on this 124 Maisto, they do not work. I mean, if you want workable headlights, one company I can recommend is Tonka Polysteel, I think it's called. They make a Countach where the headlights open. Although, in terms of quality, they are not anything more than a budget manufacturer. But they still make working headlights. And, of course, Hot Wheels Elite does that on their Ferraris. But you'll have to pay around $100 for every single one of their 118 models. But returning to the front of this car, you'll notice that it has these 2 NACA ducts. At least that's what I believe they are. And these holes over here were actually quite tiny, so I decided to grab a black marker and just enhance them a little bit to make it look like they're bigger. We got the Lamborghini logo in the middle. It's just a sticker, and to be honest, I'm not really happy with it because it's a bit elongated, I think, and of course the color has faded off, and let's be honest, this is a diecast model that's almost 20 years old now. Actually, it's close to 30 years old, so of course the yellow will fade over time. But still, they could have done it a little bit better. Now at the very front of the car, you'll notice that it has 4 lights. The bottom 2 ones are fog lights, and the ones above are the indicators. None of these lights have pegs, but that's because they aren't separate pieces at all, and they're just part of the car body. And now moving further up, you can see that this car comes with a giant wiper blade. Now this blade can be moved, although I wouldn't do it too much because it's going to scratch the windshield otherwise. But yeah, overall the front of the car looks pretty good. Now one thing I like about this model car is that even though it's just a 1/24 scale Maisto, the doors open, the back opens, and on top of that, the front trunk, that is, opens up as well. How often do you see that on a 1/24 scale model? This makes it very similar to the 1/18 scale Lamborghini Diablo that is also made by Maisto. So let's check out the front trunk. Now inside the front, you're actually going to notice something interesting. You'll see that inside we'll have something that looks like a toolbox. So it's a nice bit of detail there. Of course, I could have painted that brown and maybe the handle silver or something. But still, it's definitely better than nothing, right? Alright, let's move on to the rest of the car. So here's the car's side profile. It's your typical Lamborghini style sleekness. Now let's take a look at the rims. Now these are pretty cool looking ones. It's your typical 90s style rims. But if you pay attention to the tire walls, you'll see that it has a tire wall branding. And what it says here is SP Sport D40, I think. And then, if we move this up a little here, it says Den Lock. Now, I have never really heard about that brand, but a brand that I have heard of is Dunlop. So, that's a pretty interesting level of detail right there. And here's a look at the rear tires. Now, I believe this here is the signature of Sergio Pininfarina, although it's too small for me to read. Regarding the back tires, they are a little bit bigger than the front ones, and you can see the same tire wall branding. Now, these vents did not look as good in the beginning, so I just used a black marker to create the impression of larger vents, just like on the real car. However, if you look up here, you can see that there are real vents here, and they do not have any mesh or anything like that, but they have holes in them, which means they go through to the other side. So here's a look at the back of the car, and you'll notice that the rear license plate is not as white as it is supposed to be. It's a little bit off-white, and that's because after 20 years, the white starts to turn a little bit off-white. There's nothing I can do about that. What you'll also notice is that these two brake lights back here are different looking from one another. And that's really odd. At the beginning, I thought that this part right here basically was a plastic cover which was missing on the other side, which had fell off. But then I looked at pictures on the internet of other Maisto Lamborghini Diablos, even those of 1/18 scale cars, and the pictures that you're seeing here are of the 1/18 scale cars, and all of them have the same kind of discrepancy at the back. So I think this was part of the design. I'm not really sure why they did it like this. So if you have any idea about this, please let me know in the comments. And regarding the exhaust pipes up here, they were just silver, but I decided to do some work on them with a black marker to make them look more realistic, and I think they do look more realistic now. Now, interestingly, Maisto actually has made two versions of this 1/24 scale Lamborghini Diablo. The early version did not have the Diablo branding up here, and the Lamborghini branding up here, which I will show you in a moment, but this one does, so that's an improvement. Over here you can see more vents, and the taillights themselves are separate pieces, although I'm not really a fan of the Diablo's taillights, at least of the early ones. And now moving further up, we get to the engine of this car. So let me open up the engine bay. Then we can take a look at what's inside. This early variant of the Lamborghini Diablo is powered by a 5.7-liter naturally aspirated V12 dual overhead cam 4 valves per cylinder engine capable of 485 brake horsepower. This Diablo could reach 0 to 100 km per hour in approximately 4.5 seconds, with a top speed of 325 km per hour. And as you might know, the Diablo started out as a rear-wheel drive car. Keep in mind this was the time around which Audi purchased the Diablo brand, and after that the Lamborghini started coming with all-wheel drive. In terms of engine detail, I have to say that this is a very basic engine. I mean, especially in terms of the paint, they just went with a really coarse-looking silver, which I'm not too happy about. I think if they had gone for a better paint finish here, it would have looked better. Although you can see that it has detail. I mean, we got the air intake hoses that are textured as well. And one more bit of detail is that these vents here are perforated. And you can see the individual valves and all that, but not really that great. And now let's move on to the interior. Now, even though this is a 20-year-old model, the scissor doors still stay open. So, credit to Maisto there. Now let's check the passenger side. And you can see that there is virtually nothing painted on the interior. It's entirely kept in black. In the beginning I thought that this was a cheap move by Maisto. They could have at least painted some highlights silver. But then I went to the internet and I looked at some pictures, and the real Diablo's interior is also pretty black. Of course, there is other versions where you got a bright interior, but this picture shows you that even on the real car, everything is black, except for perhaps a small bit of silver around the gated shifter. But all the vents, the buttons, everything's black, so this is not really Maisto's fault. What you can see, though, is that they did put some rudimentary level of detail. I mean, you can see the vents up there. And the center console does have separate buttons. The seats also have some detail, like a little bit of stitching going on. And down there, if you notice the floor actually has a texture, which is visible here. And Maisto also made sure to replicate this part here, which I'm not sure what it is. It's some kind of handle, I guess, which you can use to hold on to it while the car is going super fast. I don't know. And looking at the door inserts, they do have the same sort of diagonal texture going on, just like on the real car. And here's a look at the driver's side. And you can see that the instrument panel is just a sticker. However, we do have the gauges on the sticker. And even after all these years, it's still not peeling off, so that's good. Here's another look at the center console. You can see the shifter in the middle. Seats. Now if you look at the 3-spoke steering wheel, you can see that Maisto even put a Lamborghini logo, the Raging Bull, which is raised. So that's pretty nice. And now looking at the bottom of the car, you can see that this entire part here is painted silver, but the rest is kept in black. And this is from when Maisto used to make their cars in Thailand, before they moved their production over to China. Over here it says Lamborghini Diablo in the unique font, scale 124. Here you can see the exhausts. They are bolted on with the screw, and in the front here you'll see that I've designed a contraption, which is basically a piece of black foam that I have stuck. And the reason why I did that is because these two front wheels actually have a terrible camber going on. And if I didn't do that, then when I place the car, the camber would look horrible. I'm going to show you in a second what I mean. So if you look at the front wheels, they're supposed to rest like this, right? But if you let the model rest on the front wheels, then what's going to happen is that it's going to have this camber. It's going to make it look horrible, like this. And the foam prevents that from happening. And the foam basically offers a little bit of extra suspension for the car. So if you have trouble with the front wheels of your Diablo, this would be a good way to fix that. Well guys, I hope that you liked this review of the 124 scale Lamborghini Diablo by Maisto. And if you do, please make sure to like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll see you in the next video. This is Imperial Diecast, signing out.